Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the All You Can Board podcast. I'm Carlo.
And I'm Dylan.
And on today's episode, our main course will be board game media. So we're going to be talking about where we stand in terms of our values and philosophies when it comes to board game media. We're going to be talking about the difference between videos and podcasts, written content, social media, etc. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive on YouTube, things like the algorithm, thumbnails, clickbait, titles, all kinds of stuff like that. And then we'll wrap things up by talking about the influence of board game media. So before we get to that, as always, we're going to start things off with a little appetizer. So Dylan, what have you got for us this week?
All right, this week, I am going to be talking about Four Shuffle Smoky Mountains, which is, for those who don't know, the newest version of Four Shuffle, the Four Shuffle family that's going to be coming out later this year. But it is an alpha on Board Game Arena. And I played a session of it with my partner because we're Four Shuffle fiends around here. We played the physical version as well as Dartmoor, and we played the original version with all the expansions, a whole bunch regularly. And so, yeah, I played Smoky Mountain. So everything I say here is going to be assuming that, I'm not going to go over the rules or re-explaining Four Shuffle. I'm just going to go over some of the differences in talking about this. So if you don't know much about Four Shuffle, you'll have to kind of infer from what I'm saying. But I will just say that Four Shuffle is a game with like a whole bunch of different animals, and you kind of have like your strategies that you're going into are kind of like which animal family am I going to go for? Am I going to go into plants? Am I going to go into trees? Am I going to go into moors, or whatever the case may be? And so you have all these different directions that you're going with your hand of cards, and you're playing them into your in front of you on the table. It's essentially like a tableau builder kind of thing. But anyways, going back to Smoky Mountains. Smoky Mountains, the main differences here is that in the same way that Dartmoor had these new moors, which were sort of an alternative to trees that you could place down. Smoky Mountains has rivers. And I will just say, even after one session, I already like rivers a lot more than moors. And I had no problem with moors. Like it was fine in Dartmoor, but I really do like the way they've implemented rivers. So rivers can be played by themselves to the table in the same way that you could play like trees, but also like flipped over cards in the original Four Shuffle to play them as saplings. You can play your flipped over cards as rivers in this version, but you can also play rivers underneath trees. And if you play them underneath a tree, the bottom of that tree can now hold two cards underneath it instead of one. So instead of 4 cards max, you've increased it to being 5 cards max for that tree. The other main changes with the rivers, there's a bunch of fish. So fish get their own family as well, with a bunch of different ones that you can put in there, but they have to go in the water. And then the change I didn't know about, and I changed the addition that I didn't know about going in, that I think is one of the, I don't want to say my favorite because I've only played it once, but I would say like the one that most intrigues me so far is that I don't even know how to describe this, but there's a whole bunch of cards where it'll say they either give you, like once they're played, they either give you 10 points or they by themselves give you 30 points, but you have to meet a requirement. And those requirements kind of feel like end game objectives in other games. So like a couple examples, like the elk will say it's worth 10 points, but it's worth 30 points if you have 5 different trees in your forest. And the black bear will say it's worth 10 points, but it's worth 30 points if this tree has 2 fish on it. And then the bald eagle will say it's 10 points or it's 30 points if you have at least 5 fish anywhere. And so there is all these little sort of like longer term objectives that you can get. But like I discovered really quickly that if you get too many of them, like it's really hard to hit them all. And like it's still worth it for 10 points potentially, but the 30 is the main swing. Like I got I think 2 or 3 of the 30 conditions, and that right there is 60 to 90 points, which isn't like, it's a big deal in Four Shuffle, or can be. So I didn't know about that going in, and I don't know if like they even advertised it, but I did think that was a cool little addition. It was something I discovered as I was going, where it's like, oh, it's kind of neat to have these like end game objectives that aren't like there. You have to commit to them by putting them down, but there's not necessarily like a downside if you don't get it. You still get the 10 points. You just sort of maybe wasted some time or investment for 10 points when you could have been doing it elsewhere for 30. But like as soon as you see your opponent get one, you kind of feel like you need to match and get your own, because 30 points can be a big swing to try to overcome just by playing other cards. So I really liked that addition. I'm interested to play it more. Play it more. That was an accidental pun. But yeah, so I'm just gonna wrap it up. Like honestly, I just wanted to kind of throw it out there. I've played it once. I'm actually really intrigued by it. I think I'm gonna like it more than Dartmoor. I'm not sure that it'll overcome the original for me, just because that one I think is going to be hard to sort of top with just an additional expansion or like new version of the game. The only thing I'll add is that as much as I'm talking positively about like how I've enjoyed this play of it and what I think going forward, I will say that I still completely disagree with like the model they're using for Forest Shuffle. I am not suggesting that they should have just kept releasing expansions for the original, because at some point, like, it was already getting so bloated. Like, whenever time I play 2 players with my partner with all the expansions, it says we have to remove like 90 cards or 80 cards. And like, that's fine, but like, it's a process. There's a lot of cards. We don't see a lot in each game, which again, it doesn't bother me, but any more the cards, and I would have been upset about it. But I just don't agree with like, I truly thought that when Dartmoor came out, it was like, we need a new fresh start, and we've created this as like something that's a little bit easier to expand and go from here. And instead they said, we're also expanding Dartmoor, but we're also releasing Smoky Mountain. So now it's like, okay, so you're going to have Forest Shuffle with 3 expansions. You're going to have Dartmoor with X amount of expansions. You're going to have Smoky Mountains with X. Like, it's just like, it's a great game. I'm going to keep playing because it's still fun, but like, just stop milking the things I love. That's basically what I'm saying. We don't need this many versions of Forest Shuffle, and I would be so curious to see Kosh develop and design something else without having to feel tied down to this many versions of Forest Shuffle. But I'm sure this is funding all his other ideas, so who am I to rain on that parade?
Yeah, it's a weird spot because it's hard not to hold too much against them when, like, I'm getting vibes of when you're talking about this, like games like The Crew, which there's multiple versions of, and they're continuing to release. They did this with Great Western Trail, with the Argentina version and the New Zealand version. They've done it with obviously Dune Imperium and then Imperium Uprising, and then people are like, which version do I get? Is my old version obsolete? Which expansions go with which version, kind of thing. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to try this. I also like Forest Shuffle quite a bit, to play mostly on BGA. This one does sound more interesting to me than Dartmoor as well, so I was glad to hear you say that. And the cards that, like, I really like that idea of the 10-point card that has the condition for the 30-point card. I like cards in games that give you, where you can take big swings to get a big reward, and if not, I don't know, it's just something that's fun to shoot for, right? It's little mini objectives that feel fun.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I think there's like 5 or 6 different unique ones, and it felt like one of those things where like you probably aren't going to have a game where you don't get any. It just feels like that, and that could be a positive or a negative. It just feels like if you don't get any and your opponent gets like even 2, like that's a 60-point swing you're trying to overcome, that like they only had to get on 2 cards, and they had other requirements to do it. But it feels like it's going to be like, you know, I don't know, like, is there multiple of the elk? Is there multiple to black? But like, could you be going for the same one that I'm going for? I'm assuming there's multiples, but I actually don't know, like, because I don't have the physical cards to go through. So there's a few things I want to figure out with it, but it's definitely like, it felt good on the first play.
Yeah, and now I'm wondering if Kosh took any inspiration from the 6-cost developments in Race for the Galaxy with these big cards. It's just like this thing that you can aim for that has to meet a bunch of conditions, and if it does, it gives you like a ton of points.
And I think they might all cost...
I'm going to choose to believe that he was inspired by Race to the Galaxy, whether it's true or not.
You want to believe that everyone was inspired by Race to the Galaxy on some level.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and I think they're all, just to clarify, I think they're all like 3-cost cards that have that. Like for sure, the elk, the black bear, and the bald eagle, they all cost 3 to be able to play them. But I don't know if the other ones all are too. But I think like you're paying for it and you're hoping to like get the 30 out of it.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this just sort of in person a while ago, about how Dartmoor felt like they reined things in a lot more. They made everything feel a little bit more like safe, and I don't know, it just felt like everything was kind of like a little less powerful. Sorry, just give me a second. I forgot what I was going to say about that. And so did they remove 3-cost cards in Dartmoor? I can't remember. It feels like they removed the 3-cost ones and now they've brought them back in this, right?
I don't know if I can't remember now if they removed them completely or there was just very few of them. And the other thing I'm not sure, again, because not having the physical version in front of me to kind of just like look through the cards, is I don't know if the only 3-cost cards in this version are these 30-point potential swings, or if there's like if there's like other 3-cost cards. I truly don't know. I can't remember what I saw and what I didn't. But yeah, I'd have to go back and look through the Dartmoor cards again to be sure. Can't remember now.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. Yeah. Well, I look forward to trying this probably on BGA sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for this week, I'm going to do a quick run through. I'm not going to talk about any of these games, but I got about 10 games or so here to talk about them. Just that so as you know, Dylan, I've been pretty sick for the most part of the past like month or so. I was sick with one thing, got over that, then was sick again the past couple weeks. Ended up sort of unexpectedly being told to take some time off work, and so I got away to the cabin for like a day and a half. Dave ended up coming out with me for the first day or so. He was there for about 24 hours. So the first day we got out there, we played Lawyer Up. It was the first time for both of us playing this. So it was it's kind of like a 2-player asymmetric card game where there's like a court case basically, and it's the defense against the prosecution. And so this game, it took a lot longer than either of us would have liked, I think, to like get through the rules and get kind of up and running. And there were a couple times we had to clarify about the rules. It reminded me a little bit of Watergate, which we played a few years ago now, but that tug of war aspect where you basically are taking turns like calling up a witness. There's like a group of witnesses cards that are face up on the table, and every round, like when it's your turn, you call a witness to the stand, and then you go back and forth with the other player like playing cards. And when one player passes, the other player only has one last turn to like basically ask your final questions. And then you look at like the power level of how much the jury and the judge are like swayed, and the whole game is trying to sway each of the jury members, and whoever has more jury members in their favor at the end. So it was one of those games where once we kind of like plowed through it and found our footing and knew what we were doing, we started to kind of like see some pretty cool aspects of the game. The theme was coming through pretty well. We started seeing like clever plays that you could do with the cards. I'm not going to get too much more into the rules or anything like that here. But overall, it just felt like it was a little bit unpolished, a little bit unrefined. It felt like the type of game where to get the most out of it, you'd have to play it a few more times. But it's also a bit longer than I'd like for that kind of 2-player game. It took us probably between hour and a half. And even though you can maybe get a little bit quicker, I don't know, it was a good experience still, but it was probably like a 6 out of 10 for me. Like a decent game. I'd play it if Dave wanted to play it again, but I probably wouldn't request to play it again. Next, we played Raptor. So this was another 2-player asymmetric game. This was an older one that I'd heard about for a long time, co-designed by Bruno Cathala and Bruno Faiduti. One person is playing as the Raptors, trying to escape, basically, and then the other team is playing as the Hunters, trying to capture a certain number of Raptors. And you have each player has a 9-card hand, and each of the cards has a value from 1 through 9, and they also come with an ability. And so you're each like picking a card, putting it face down, and then you simultaneously reveal your cards. And then I can't remember, it's like I think it's the lower number gets to act first, but then the higher number gets to do these different actions based on the difference between the values. And you're kind of basically just a little tactical game of kind of maneuvering on the board. The theme comes through surprisingly well. I did very poorly. Dave, I was the Raptors, and he captured, I think it was 4 Raptors to win. He captured me pretty quickly. So, but it was fun. I would definitely play it again. It was one where I don't think I would like seek out buying a copy to own it, but like this is one I would definitely like to play 1 or 2 more times in the future.
Nice.
That's
one I've been curious about. No, I've been curious about it for a while, so I definitely want to check it out at some point.
Yeah, okay. Then we played Carcassonne. Dave was getting curious after like you kind of had a bit of I don't want to put words in your mouth and say recently like fell in love with it, but at least sort of came around to it a bit. And he's like, I feel like we got to play Carcassonne. So I brought it out. We played it, and it went well. Like I don't think he necessarily like loves the game, but I think he enjoyed it enough and could see a bit more why I love it so much and why you've kind of why it's grown on you as well. But so just yes, yeah, he didn't take me down like you did from not playing in so long. But it really came down to like one. It was just like one really big field that was worth like 24 points or 30 points or something that ended up swinging it in my favor. Then we played Ingenious. So this is a Knizia game which you bought, played, and sold before I could even try it some years ago. I don't know how
Yeah.
many years ago it was now. I
A
remember
while
thinking at the
ago
time
now.
too that I would maybe buy it off of you because I was like, I should try it at some point, but I was like, it's probably easy enough to get another copy later, or maybe I'll try it across the board or something. And man, this might have been the highlight of the weekend for me in terms of games played. I was super impressed by this. Like, I never thought this would end up being a Knizia game that I love, and like I'm absolutely going to be buying a copy of this. I love that it has that kind of like Tigris and Euphrates scoring. The abstract theme didn't, like, for how abstract it is, because it's just colors and shapes, that didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. And it takes a bit because it is very spatial, the way that you kind of lay down these two-sided, or these, like, I don't even know how to describe them, but it's basically
Aren't they like
two
dominoes?
yeah, they're dominoes, but each half is a hexagon, basically. And they'll have either two of the same symbol or two different ones. And when you're laying them down, they have to kind of like line up and chain in a certain way. And I don't know, it was just really interesting. And it's one of those games, like, you look and the rules are like 1 page or 2 pages. It's so simple and just feels like a game I could play over and over and over again. So yeah, I'll definitely be buying a copy of that. And this is like possibly a new top 50 game for me. I really, really
Wow.
liked Ingenious.
I mean, I'm not surprised you liked it. Like, I when you said you were going to be playing it and like that you were interested in it, I thought, like, I think this is a game you like. I just didn't know how much. I can't even remember all the reasons it didn't fully land for me. I played it twice, I think, and I just didn't feel like super compelled to go back to it, or I think it was like, I don't know that I'm gonna choose this over other options that I had at the time, or like seek it out. So it was going to be one of those games that kind of sits on my shelf that I hold for like the one time I play it every year or two. So, but yeah, that's sweet.
I think it was around the time we were playing a lot of Blue Lagoon. We had probably recently discovered Babylonia, so there was like two Knizia like tile layers. And I think the main thing was that you chose at the time to keep Witchstone over it, because Witchstone had that thing with the two-sided hexagonal tiles and the comboing. So yeah, it made sense. But yeah, we'll definitely play it again sometime once I acquire a copy. And Dave has it as well. Obviously, this was his copy that he brought out. So yeah, I was expecting this game to be like a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me. It was like, now at minimum after the first play is an 8. I could see it maybe being a 9 after more plays. Then we played Findorf, and it was awesome. We played all these in like the screened porch, so we were basically outside the whole time. So Findorf, this was probably my 5th or 6th time playing, maybe not quite 6th, 4th or 5th. Engine building game by Friedman Friese, has a lot of similar DNA as Power Grid in terms of the way like the resource market fluctuates. You've played it, I think, twice, is it right? I think we played it once 2-player and once 3.
Yes, I think you're right, but
It's
I
been a
can't
while
remember.
now, though.
Yeah, like at least once for sure, but I can't remember for
Yeah.
sure if there was 2 times or not.
Okay, so one thing I have to shout out right now is I love that. Like, I've played this game now with probably 4 or 5 different people, and of anyone I've played it with, Dave appreciated the theme more than anyone, and the fact that it's kind of like Friedemann Friese's like love letter to his like hometown, and like it talks. Anyways, it's just I love. People often criticize games for being like, oh, too themeless, or when they try to give a theme, it's too tacked on or whatever, and then people will criticize games for like making an attempt at a theme that they're not interested in or whatever. And I just feel like a lot of people have written this game off because if you've never heard of Findorf, you don't know that it's the name of a place, you don't know anything about the game, like, it's kind of a tough sell. But if you give the game a chance and you get to know a bit about like the history of the place, anyways, we had a really great time. But it did remind me that it was much better last time when I played it with 3 players, and I don't think I would go out of my way to play this again with 2. It just feels like you get too many of the cards. The scores get so inflated. The game feels like it drags a bit at the end because everything is just shared between 2 players. I think you need, with 3, it felt like 3, I imagine, or maybe 4 is going to be the sweet spot. I think 5 for an engine builder might make it feel a bit long. But anyways, so I think Dave enjoyed it. I was glad to play it again to kind of refresh on the rules. But it was a reminder to kind of, definitely play with 3 or 4 players next time. And then we ended the night with Duel for Cardia, which is a relatively new 2-player, very small box card game, almost a micro game. And so this is takes 10 or 15 minutes to play. I'm not going to get too into the rules here, but you basically each have the same deck of cards. Like it's 16 cards or 18 cards. And what is it? I think you have a a hand of 3 cards at the time, and you're basically picking cards, putting them down in front of you, and flipping them up to reveal, and you compare the values, and it's the first person to like win 5 of these. I don't remember what they're called, but like gems or whatever, by having a higher value. So it kind of has like a battle line feel to an extent, but there's this thing where you can change the order. If it kind of reminded me of another game called Oriflamme, where you can change things going on in a line. The bit of guillotine too. I think there's some inspiration from some of those games. I was really impressed with this, and the fact that it comes with another set of 2 different decks with like another set of ability powers, so that you can play basically 2 different versions of the same game in this tiny box that's like $15. Like, really strong first impression. Can't wait to play this a lot more. And I can't remember, have you played this yet, whether in person or BGA?
I've played it a few times on BGA. And yeah, I've enjoyed it on all my plays. I haven't disliked any of the plays, but it hasn't wowed me. And I think it's also just because I was playing it at the same time as I was playing Tag Team, as I was playing, I think like relatively recently, we had either played or at least discussed Wizards Cup. Same thing with Challengers and all these games. And like, I think I'm at the point with this style of game where for me to be like, I want to play this regularly, it's got to do something that like grabs me a little bit more, because I just feel like I've seen this style of game. It's one of the better ones. It's certainly better than Wizards Cup. I don't know whether I like it more and less than Tag Team yet. I think I'd have to play both a few more times to know. I think Tag Team's more fun, and I like the theme better. But yeah, like I definitely, like, I was pleasantly surprised by it, because I went in kind of with no expectations, and I left being like, oh yeah, like that's, especially for the price, like that's what I could see playing again or owning one day or something.
Yeah, fair enough. I honestly, I hadn't even thought about the comparison to Wizards Cup, but you're right. It does have a lot of that like mind games, and if you play it with the same person over and over and you get to know the cards, there's probably a meta that starts to develop and stuff. So yeah, I'm curious to see if after more plays, if it feels like it, if it has the depth, or if it just kind of like fizzles as like a cool concept and a good small box, low price point kind of game, but maybe it doesn't have the legs ultimately. We'll see. So that was it for the first day, and then the second day we just had sort of a few hours before Dave had to head out. So we started the morning with Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation, another asymmetric 2-player game, and this one we did the recommended setup where you each play as I'm going to say it again, Frodo and the gang versus Sauron and his cronies, and then you swap. Basically, if you win, you're supposed to count how many pieces you have left on the board, and that's your score. And then you swap and then play again, and if the person who wins the next game counts how many pieces they have left, and then you just compare that score, because it's supposed to be, you're supposed to each play as each side once. So I won't say too much more. I've talked about this game before. Still an excellent 2-player game. It had been probably at least 2 or 3 years since I had played it, and this was Dave's first time playing. He loved it. I think this was his highlight of the weekend. He was like, oh man, this is the most thematic Knizia game I've played, and it's definitely one of them. It's for sure up there, and it's just amazing how thematically accurate it is to all the Lord of the Rings characters. For those who don't know, it's basically just like a Lord of the Rings themed version of Stratego, where you set up your pieces before the game starts, and your opponent has no idea what's what, and then you just start one at a time moving your pieces forward, and if 2 pieces share the same spot, they go to battle, so you reveal them, and there's special abilities, and there's bluffing and deception, and it's just a great experience. So I was glad to revisit that, and it reminded me that you and I need to definitely play it more, because it's been a couple of years since we played it together. Yeah. Okay, then we played Paperback, which is a deck building word game by Tim Fowers that I'd been wanting to try for years now. So finally got the chance to try it, and it was quite good. I liked a lot about it. There were some things that surprised me, like in a good way. But I would say overall the game definitely took longer than I would have liked. I think Dave and I both agreed. One is like, it was pretty analysis paralysis inducing, and a couple times I was apologizing, like, I'm just going to end this turn, I'm just going to use this 3-letter word, and Dave's like, no, you can make a better word, just take your time. And like, that game kind of, it broke my brain a little bit. At times you get certain cards and that there's so much potential there, and it feels horrible to just take a terrible word and move on, but also to hold up and make everyone sit there and wait. Like, thankfully it was just 2 players. But it also, I think we also just weren't efficient enough at acquiring points. And so with a lot of these games like Dominion, like, a lot of these engine building or games where there's like a race target of points, if early on the games take longer, and as you get better, they tend to be quicker. So I think with more plays, I'd enjoy it more, and I would definitely play it again. I enjoyed it, but I know this is one you've wanted to try as well, eh?
Yeah, totally. I was just looking it up again here because I couldn't remember exactly which one it was. But yeah, I definitely want to try this one.
Yeah, you would like it. I don't know if it's someone you would necessarily need to own. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't need to own a copy, but I'd happily play it a few more times. Then we played Patterns. Won't talk about this one too much because we talked about it a decent amount in our most recent like 2-player video on the channel and our 2-player games podcast episode, which was I believe episode 3. But it's a 2-player abstract game in the Lookout line. Takes about 15-20 minutes to play, sort of mandala inspired. So this was Dave's first time playing. It was just a real joy to revisit this. It was such a good game. Every time I play it, I'm reminded of how good it is, and like I'm always like, why am I not playing this more often? It really is like continues because of how abstract it is. It's just circular tokens with a color, like it's on a little cloth mat that you roll out, and like it just seems so simple, and so it feels like an ancient, timeless game, and so good.
Yeah, every time I play it, I feel like I confirm more and more that I like it more than Mandala, the original.
Yeah.
Like I knew that even I think after the first play, but every time I play it, it just like reinforces it for me. Even though I love Mandala, it's great.
Yeah. And then after that, we wrap things up by playing Chuhan. So this is the Tom Lehman 2-player shedding game. So we've talked about this one a couple times. We talked about it in our Dig In or Move On episode on the channel and whatnot, so I won't talk about that one too much either. I will just say I think I got off to a pretty good early lead, and Dave came back and won, if I'm not mistaken. Well, he definitely won, but I think I was off to a pretty good lead, and he came back. So I like that it has the multiple rounds thing. We've talked about this with games like Lost Cities, where you can play a bit more risky when you fall behind and that kind of thing. And then I was playing super risky when I was behind at the end, trying to catch up, and I kind of went for a Hail Mary thing in the final round, trying to get it like double my I played the card that lets you double your points and do all this kind of stuff, but ended up losing that round, so it didn't pull through. But yeah, I enjoyed playing it again. I don't think the game is gonna we'll see. Once I try the campaign mode eventually, we'll see if it continues to grow on me at all. But I might have reached my ceiling on how much I enjoy it, which is probably like a solid 8 out of 10, but we'll see. I still want to play it a little more and check out the campaign mode.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, but there's big gaps between each time I play it, and I feel like I need to like play it a bunch close together, like kind of like I did with Panda Spin, to just know where it sits for me.
Yeah, that's fair. And there's something I tend to like these shedding games more with more players. I found that even just the idea, like I would rather play Scout or Panda Spin with 4 players than I would play Chuhan with 2. So that's where I'm just not sure if it'll, stick around in my collection. But yeah, so then after Dave took off, the only other thing I played solo was I kind of learned Core of Discovery. So I basically just spent some time reading the rules and did the training mission. It's sort of like a Minesweeper, imagine like Minesweeper or Sudoku style, kind of it's a logic deduction puzzle that you can play solo or cooperatively. So it's really cool that you pull out these kind of sheets and you're supposed to kind of like hold this white, I don't remember what they call it, it's like a cover, like a screen over it, and then you slide it into this like layered board, and then you cover up all the slots, and then you slide the white sheet out, and so all the slots are covered up because you don't know what the values are. And as you play the game, you're exploring and trying to uncover, like, is this water, is this wood, is this food, am I discovering an enemy, like, and it's kind of like a survival game where you can actually run out of food and die while you're kind of like trying to figure out where things are based on rules, like water needs to be next to wood. And so anyway, I'll talk about this more on the channel once I've actually been able to play some of the actual maps, because again, I just did the training mission, planning to play the next play a bit more of it soon. So yeah, that was it. Honestly, considering I was only out there for about a day and a half, it was good to cram in this many games. Lawyer Up and Raptor were both new to me, as was Ingenious and Duel for Cardia, I guess, and the training mission for Core of Discovery. So the highlights were probably, I would say, Ingenious was the definite highlight in terms of new games, but it was really nice to also revisit Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation and Patterns. And least favorite, if I had to pick, would probably be Lawyer Up. Not a bad game by any means, but just in a sea of like really excellent games, it was one that stood out as just kind of okay.
Yeah, that sounds like a sweet lineup of games for a little like impromptu cabin trip. That's awesome.
Yeah, considering how unexpected last second it was, and we don't normally do like 2-person gaming cabin trips. Would have liked if obviously you had been free and some other people had been free, we would have been able to make it a bigger group. But yeah, had a good time nonetheless, and we'll have to make one happen together real soon. All right, and with that out of the way, let's take a brief break to hear from our sponsor before we jump back into our main course for this week.
All You Can Board is proudly sponsored by Victory Pints, our local game store of choice here in Winnipeg, Canada. We strongly believe that Victory Pints is the gold standard of board game stores, not just here in Winnipeg. Their main priority is having a wide selection of games, many of which you won't find elsewhere. They ship Canada-wide, $15 flat rate, or free shipping for orders over $200, and even take requests to try and order in specific games. They also have a used game section where you can trade in games for store credit, and maybe even find some hidden gems that others have traded in. Note that the used game section is only available for in-person purchases and trades. Again, located in Winnipeg at the corner of Henderson and Hespeler, check them out at victorypints.ca. A massive thank you to Victory Pints for all their support over the years.
This is Future Carlo here. Just before we get into the episode, just wanted to let you know we were having such a good and thorough discussion about this and had barely scratched the surface of our talking points, and the episode was already running a bit long. So we've actually decided to break this topic into a 2-part episode. So in the next couple of days after this first episode is released, you will get episode 14.5 that will appear in our main feed, and will just be a continuation of this where you'll hear us talk about the differences between videos, podcasts, all different types of content. We'll do a deep dive of YouTube, and you'll hear more about the influence of board game media and such. So apologies for this being broken up into 2 episodes, but on the plus side, you get a little bit bonus AYCB this between episodes. All right, we are back, and so we are talking today about board game media. So the first thing we want to start by saying here is just, I guess we'll talk about why we chose to talk about this on the podcast, why we chose this as a kind of a main feature topic. Part of it is just like we always want to try to be as transparent as possible, within reason, within what makes sense to us, and what is fair to our viewers previously and now listeners as well with the podcast. And we've sort of talked about some of these topics before in like our most recent channel update videos. I think one was in January of 2024, and another one was, I believe, probably January of this year, 2026. So we've kind of touched on some of these things, but, we always had, like, some of the people who listen to the podcast don't watch the channel, that kind of thing. And also, like, not everyone watches channel update videos, people who do, who have been following us. And the other thing is just like a podcast is a better space to have this type of discussion. And as we still have a relatively new podcast, we just felt it was a good time to kind of put this out there, to have as a bit of a reference point, something for us to talk through. It's these things come up between us a lot, like when, just on our own gaming time, when we're hanging out, whatever. And so we thought it was a good thing to talk about live on the show here. So I guess I'll say right now that ultimately we're making the content that we'd like to watch and hear, and that's something that we've always made clear, and that's going to drive a lot of what you hear when we're talking about our values and philosophies here and that kind of thing. And I also just want to mention before we go any further that we're going to do a future episode one day specifically about reviewing games. So we're only going to touch on reviewing games briefly here, so that we don't get too in depth about something that'll be a main feature topic, its own topic one day. So I guess the last thing I'll say before I throw it over to you, Dylan, to weigh in on this before we jump into the first topic is just that we're not making any grand declarations here of like what we think is right or wrong for other people. But we've been doing this for 6+ years now, and we've had a lot of time to kind of reflect on how we started doing things, how we've wanted to do things differently along the way, and how we want to do things going forward. And so now it just feels like we've landed in a good spot. We're pretty confident of how we feel about this. And so, this isn't to disparage anyone else for what they might be doing in the space, or for people who are watching creators who might be doing things differently than us. But this is just kind of how we feel we want to do things in this space.
For sure. And the only thing I'll emphasize is just that we're not, or I don't want to speak for you, but I think for both of us, but definitely for myself, is that like I'm not going to, I'm going to be very intentional about not like referring to any creators or channels specifically, but you might, based on something I'm saying, like I'm still going to be actually pulling from things that like I'm seeing or that other creators have done, but like I don't want to make this, and I don't think either of us do something where it's like we're saying something about a specific channel or a specific creator, because everyone does their own content because it might be the content they want to watch, right? Like it's not like who am I or is anyone to say like this content is wrong. That's just not the case. Like there's content I might think is wrong from my opinion, or that like I don't want to watch, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying it, it shouldn't exist or someone else doesn't get something out of it. So I'm going to be very intentional about like not calling out anyone specifically or referencing anyone by name. So in case you were like, oh, that sounds kind of vague, or like, or is that in reference to this? Like, it's not about that. This isn't supposed to be an opportunity for us to like throw people under the bus or put a spotlight on people that might not want a spotlight on them. This is just us to talk about our perspective, our opinions, and because we've been in board game media now for like 6+ years.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, hopefully it's insightful to people in some way, because if you would have asked me to talk about, my thoughts on board game media before we launched the channel, or even in the first year or two that we launched it versus now, like I have completely different thoughts and so much more perspective now. So, but yeah, we'll circle back to that after. So, all right, I felt like I went a bit long in the appetizer section here, so I want to hear from you here. Let's start with talking about what are our values and philosophies in terms of board game media. So following up on those past couple channel updates. So let's start with like paid content. So whether that's reviews, crowdfunding previews, unboxings, how to play videos, etc. The topic of asking for money, doing this full time, that kind of stuff. Like, where do you stand on all that, Dylan?
Yeah, it's interesting. And like, so I don't have anything against paid content. And in fact, like anyone who does, whether it's board game media or like any kind of media, as either like a journalist, as a content creator, as a reviewer, whatever the case may be, like the only way you can do it is if you're getting paid from somewhere, like in terms of like if you wanted to do it as your job, like as a full-time job or as something that's, funding your life, then absolutely you need to get paid somewhere. Board game media has always been an interesting space because it's small, it's niche. And what that means is that there are not a lot of avenues to be like, oh, this is where I make my money. This is how I make it sustainable. There's a reason there's not very many board game channels that do this full time. And the ones that do it full time are not all of them, but I would say like a large majority. There's sacrifices that need to be made to be able to do that. And by sacrifices, I mean you have to take on a lot of like paid previews, or you have to take on a lot of content that feels more like advertisements for a game than less maybe opinion, because it's something that'll sort of pay the bills, keep the lights on for you to do the other content that you want to do. And so the way where we've landed is that, we've always believed that like you should never be getting paid for reviews. And that's something I can say like across the board. If you are doing reviews of games and you're being paid like money for that, I just think that's ethically irresponsible. I think that like, I'm not going to get into the details or the like specifics here, but like, I think that there's, obviously you get sent a product for free, so like you can view that as a form of payment, but I think that there's a differentiation there big time, because it's like you need that product to be able to do the review, and you shouldn't have to pay for it because the company is getting free like marketing from you for you to do that review, whether you like it or whether you don't. But in terms of like a company says, hey, here's our review and we'll pay you $300 to do this review, like the amount of bias, the amount of problems that come up with that, I don't even have to really explain. That's just something we don't believe. Previews are something you see widespread in our industry in terms of paid previews, and it's not that one I think is ethically wrong or wrong in any way. I just think that me personally, it's not. I know enough about not even just board game media, but just the media space in general, and YouTube and influencer culture and all this kind of stuff, that like if I am watching anything on any platform and I realize it's a paid advertisement, either because it's prompted on the screen or because they say this is a paid preview, whatever, I instantly just stop watching. And it has nothing to do with that creator. It's just that like I get sold to in every aspect of my life constantly, in the billboards that I drive by, on the radio things I listen to, on the shows shows I watch. Like the last thing I need is when I'm opting into content and choosing what I want to watch to be like, oh, now I'm just going to watch an advertisement, something that I can't fully trust if this is someone's opinion or if it's because of the money they were paid that they felt like they couldn't be honest or whatever the case may be. I personally, I don't see the value in it. I understand why it exists. I understand why companies will seek out those people. I understand why there's people will take those jobs, especially if it's making them money to be able to do their channel. I just think it gets to the point where like, if you as a content creator, and again, I want to stress, I don't think you're doing anything wrong by taking paid previews. We've done paid previews. We just opted out of them. But if you're doing them and you ask yourself the question, if you like are completely honest with yourself and you say, do I enjoy doing them? If the answer is no, I would just challenge you to say, then why do you think your audience will enjoy watching it? And that's really what I think it comes down to for me is like, I've never enjoyed doing them. And even if it feels like a necessity, and even if like you want to sort of respond to that by saying, well, you can't enjoy every part of what you do. Like no one likes every aspect of their job. It's like, but this is a YouTube channel we made because we wanted to have fun, because we wanted to make the content we wanted to watch. Like as soon as I'm making paid previews that I don't want to do, it really just comes down to like, why am I doing it? And so that's sort of where I landed on it. The only thing that I think that it makes 150% sense to take money for, and I think that you should always, in my perfect world, every content creator would get paid for it if they were doing it, are how to play videos, because the amount of usefulness how useful they are to people, how many people watch how to play videos, how many people like swear by watching videos instead of reading rule books. Like you're doing such a service to that company, and we've done so many how to play videos that we have been not paid for, that like people like Lost Ruins of Arnak, most viewed video on our channel, probably like how a lot of people out there that watch rules videos have learned how to play Lost Ruins of Arnak through that video, if that's what they opt to do it. Like we didn't get paid a dime for that. And not only that, there's an official one that someone else did get paid for, and that's great. Like we didn't ask for money. It wasn't like something we were seeking out. I just did that because I wanted to do how to play for it. But that's something that I think absolutely, like if you can get paid for it, get paid for it, because you deserve every penny of the money. Especially if you're doing really good how to plays, they take a lot of work. They are they serve a really great purpose, and yeah, everyone should get paid for them. So I'll leave it as that at that. But like it's tough. Like as someone who now was trying to like sort of do this full time for like, for half a year, for 6 months. Like you don't, especially if you're taking our kind of stance on stuff we don't want to take money in for all these different places. It's so hard to make anywhere near enough money to go full time. But it's one of the reasons that like it's not really a niche on YouTube or social media or whatever that is in a place to facilitate a bunch of full-time creators. Like it's not big enough to have like, 200 creators that are full-time in board game media. Like I wish it was, but like I just don't think it's there. Do you disagree? Or what do you think?
No, I think there's people who are showing that it's possible to do it full-time in different ways. Like there's different creators out there doing it in different ways, whether that's quantity over quality, quality over quantity, whether it's primarily through YouTube or whether it's through podcasting, whether it's primarily through, Patreon, or whether it's primarily through like ads or sponsorships, or like there are a lot of different types of sources, and there's creators out there who have done videos going into detail about this kind of stuff. And so I guess the first thing I'll touch on is I'm gonna run through some of these as well real quick that we were talking about. Like when it comes to reviews, I agree with you 100% that the review copy is there to provide access to the game, and I don't like I see that kind of stuff online. It always bothers me when people are like, oh, they're just doing this to get free games, or like stuff like, I don't know, I guess maybe other people might treat review copies differently. I know there are some people who sell their review copies, and that's one thing we don't do, because that we don't want to feel like they are. 'Cause then if we started selling like a $300 game and getting that money back, we might feel more compelled to take on giant expensive review copies, knowing that like, well, this could lead to more financial gain. And so those ones we're obviously giving away free to our like patrons and stuff. But yeah, I agree with that. Reviews should just never have any financial compensation. Previews, they weren't fun or enjoyable to make. They just weren't rewarding in the same way as most other videos. The other thing is like they immediately feel like they lose relevancy as soon as the campaign is done. Once that the game can immediately undergo changes with rules, the way the game looks. Then suddenly there's an official how to play video. Suddenly your video is irrelevant and might even be obsolete. Like there might be stuff in there that like the rules might be wrong now in that video or whatever, right? So you're helping someone make a decision on whether to back a game or not over the span of potentially 30 days, and then the video is basically dead. And then the other thing is like we tried the aspect of like trying to remain really neutral when we were deciding whether or not to do them more, right? We tried to decide like we'll try to remain really neutral, not weigh in on our opinion, just be really like objective, just state like the facts about the game. But then it also felt like, well, we're only picking games that we're interested in covering that we think we're going to enjoy. So by doing that, aren't we almost naturally like, if we're only covering games we're probably enjoying, then by that it feels like we're almost biased already. Like people are going to know, well, they probably like the game, otherwise they wouldn't be covering it.
Yeah, it's just like, I guess where I struggled with previews is that like it really more than anything just felt like me just freelancing as on the marketing team of that company or for that game. Like at the end of the day, if I have to be completely neutral, which I think that like to do a preview, especially if you're playing a prototype, especially if you've only been able to play the game a couple times, a handful of times, whatever the case may be, like you're really just giving facts, and it's like I'm not saying it's not valuable, because it's valuable for someone trying to decide, should I back this game, to be able to see visuals, to be able to see someone who's putting a lot of effort into B-roll or whatever the case may be to see it. But like there already is a Kickstarter page with all the details there. There's like in my opinion, the company. Like the company is paying for those paid previews, but they would have had to have created some sort of video material, whether that's a rules tutorial, whether that's whatever. They're just using the influencers, the content creators, to do that instead. And so you very much become this freelance extension while you're also trying to like essentially run your YouTube channel as your own like entertainment channel with your own programming. But then you're like also being like, and I can't think of a better word, but like essentially a mouthpiece to say like, you should buy this game. This game is interesting. You should look into this game. You might like this if this. And it just like, once you see a creator do that like 3, 4, 5 times, you realize that like you could almost like, yes, the games are all different, but like they're just kind of saying the same neutral phrases over and over and over again in just like a different coat of paint, or with like in relation to a different mechanic or a different genre. And you just start like, I don't know, for me, it just like the veil quickly sort of came down. You realize like I'm basically watching a commercial, and like and again, like they need to advertise their game, but like I just don't know that advertising through content creators is something that I fully understand. And this is from someone who's done it, and then who's also watched it, and has sort of come out the other side of it and been like, yeah, like it's not for me to do. It's not for me to consume. It's just not for me. I'm not into like spending my time watching like, sales videos for games, unless like if I'm really interested in buying one myself, I will do research, but it's not going to be a content creator's video that's going to be the thing that sways me personally. And so that's also another reason why I might be biased. Like it's just not how I make my purchasing decisions, I would say, for board games.
Yeah, same. And I think we're going to come back to this when we do a crowdfunding big crowdfunding episode one day, because we don't really back a ton of games these days. So yeah, we're not really like interacting with a lot of this type of content these days anyways. The last piece I wanted to touch on here was what you mentioned about how to play videos. And yeah, I mean, we see how often there are rulebook errors, or even if not errors, just like rulebooks that are poorly organized. Like even Core of Discovery, which I was talking about earlier, that game was a lot harder to learn than it should have been. Like things were just not clarified where they should be. You see this a lot, and these videos take a lot of time and effort, like more than I think people realize, because we're going through the rule book, rewriting our own version of the script, then going over the script to make sure that we're not missing rules, that the rules are right, making sure that we have the proper B-roll shots to go over the right spots. Like there's a lot that goes into making it succinct, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's not something that we're gonna go back and rewatch. Like I'm not going back rewatching how to play videos that I shot or that you shot, right? Like they're not things that are going to be rewarding for us to go back and rewatch. But for the publisher, like a good video can make the difference between someone enjoying a game or not. So yeah, I agree with you. That's those should absolutely be paid for. Like basically no publisher should be reaching out asking you to do this for free. I'm not saying that, like, if you want to do a how to play video and you don't want to go contact the publisher asking for money, like, go for it. Like I said, we've done that. I'm just saying no one should be reaching out expecting someone to do one of those for free.
The piece of advice I would give is I don't want to say don't do how to play videos for free, because they can be a great source to sort of boost views and get your channel noticed, because they are valuable and people return to them constantly, and you can post it and have it get like 60 views in the first week, and all of a sudden it get by the like a year from now it's got like 40,000 views, right? Like it's also something that has like a lot of shelf life. But I would say that as quick as possible, stop doing them for free. Like once, like if there's something I could go back, it would be like after we did the crew how to play, after we did Lost Ruins of Arnak, at some point I just would have stopped doing them, and I would have started to, like, if I really wanted to have that be something I continue to do, I would have looked at it as a potential revenue source to help fund like the channel to be able to like do some of the bigger video projects we want to do. And I would have reached out earlier to publishers saying, hey, here's this how to play with different Lost Ruins of Arnak. I taught it in 14 minutes. Like, I would love to teach some of your complicated games in shorter periods of time, or to get people to get to the table quicker, whatever the case may be. Like, as quick as possible, like transition to only doing them for money, because I truly believe that no publisher should be lucky enough to get a how to play video for free. And I mean that with all the respect to the publishers who do pay money, but also just like, it's not their fault creators decide to do how to play videos for free. That we did a whole bunch, but like you're doing their marketing work that should be coming out of their marketing budget for free for them. And like oftentimes they're really thankful. Oftentimes they'll offer to send you other games for free because of that and everything. But like you should be paid for it. There's channels out there dedicated to how to play videos. That's all they do, and they are getting paid money constantly for doing those videos. So.
I was gonna say, go look at like the 5 biggest channels that focus mainly on how to play videos. Whether that's like Watch It Played is obviously the main biggest one out there, but there's a lot of them, and just look at the amount of views that those videos get. Like, that is a large percentage of the people who are ending up playing those games and reviewing them online and helping spread the word, which is going to drive further sales. Like, yeah, it's huge. So in terms of this kind of like going full time, asking for money, like I kind of wanted to just touch a little bit more on that before we move on. And I guess for a kind of a launching point for this, I want to bring up the video that the channel The Dragon's Tomb did a while ago. I don't remember exactly what the video was called. I should have pulled it up. I apologize, but it was basically about creators asking for money, and he wasn't taking shots at anyone in particular or anything like that. But he was kind of highlighting these videos where, like, whether it's videos or whatever the kind of statements that people make, where they're saying basically that like my channel is struggling, or if you want me to be able to keep doing this, or being able to produce videos at this rate, whatever. Like, I also want to be careful not to come across as like insensitive here, because my situation is not the same as other people. And I think because of the fact that we've never taken, like, you ended up trying to do this full time for however many months as a result of like unfortunately losing your job, but neither of us, like, you now have another job lined up and stuff. Like, neither of us have been in a point where we're actually relying on the income from AYCB, from All You Can Board, to keep us afloat. So when I see people making these videos, I always try to put myself in their shoes and ask, like, maybe that, like, if this was their main source of income and they're actually like whatever going into debt or have been in debt, they're looking at how to feed their family and stuff like that. I have to try to keep that in mind when I'm being critical or looking at it as like, that I don't think you should be asking people for money in this certain way. So I want to mention that real quick. But the line that made me kind of laugh from that Dragon's Tomb video is where he says there's two. There's one where he basically says something like, you owe me, like, for all these videos I've done in the past, like, yeah, they were free at the time, but you didn't know, but like now you owe me for those free videos. But the other one is where he basically says something along the lines of like, if you don't pay me, I'll threaten to shut down my channel. I won't shut down my channel, but I will threaten to. And that's kind of like, I agree with the point he's making there. It's like, basically, like, I just don't like when it comes across as like a guilt trip where a creator is asking for the money and basically saying like, if not enough of you support me, I will shut down the channel, or I can only continue this if I reach these certain targets. Like, it's not that there's anything maybe inherently like disreputable necessarily about someone asking for that. I feel like it reminds me a little bit of like relying on customer tips at a restaurant to supplement low wages, where like that should be on the restaurant, and if the restaurant isn't able to make enough money to pay their employees, or they're choosing not to, then those people should seek employment elsewhere, which is basically what we've done. Is like, we've seen that it hasn't been possible to do things this way, and we're not going to sit here and like beg people for Patreon money, so we just like go about doing our other jobs and do this on the side as a side hobby when we can. And do you agree with that kind of like the restaurant analogy of like kind of like asking for, you know what I mean? Like, there's other places in the world, like in Europe, where like they're just paid better, so like tips aren't really a thing. And like, why is that on? You know?
I almost like, honestly, like I almost when any of the times I've referenced and said like about going full time or a channel going full time, like, if you're in a position where you are doing board game media as your only job, but most of your money comes from like, say, Patreon and stuff, like, I don't want to say you're not full time, because you're doing it full time, but like that's a risky place to be. You haven't really gone full time. You're being like, your lack of income is being supplemented by your audience paying for you to continue to do it. And that, to then say like, okay, well, you know, I am just making enough to be able to do this and to live and everything. And then all of a sudden 1 month, some of your audience is like, oh, I can't afford to back at these high tiers. And you lose like 3 or 4 high tiers on Patreon. And suddenly you're like, oh shoot, like I can't pay all my bills. You can't, well, you can, but I guess I'm saying you shouldn't then every single time that happens have to go to your audience and say, I need more money to be able to do this. Like, we're living at a time where for many people, the world is on fire. You know what I mean? Like, we need entertainment. We need things to take our mind off. We need things to give us joy. But more than ever, I don't feel like many people don't have money to necessarily pay you when they might already be paying for YouTube Premium because they don't want the ads, or if they can't do that, they're in a position where they can barely afford groceries. You know what I mean? So it's a really risky thing to say I'm full time when you're only full time because of, say, like Patreon or YouTube, whatever YouTube calls their Patreon equivalent and stuff. But many YouTube memberships, yeah. So so I guess that's for us, like for me anyways, I've never necessarily wanted to be in a position where the only way that, it would be great to be completely funded by the audience, because then it's like, in many ways, like, you're not tied to any publishers, you're not tied to any corporate interests or anything like that, and you truly are doing it for your fans. But at the same time, I would want to be able to provide them content they don't feel like only exists because they have to give me money, and the second they don't, they're at risk of losing us because then I have to shut down the channel. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like there's, even if I don't threaten it, it's almost like there is a perpetual threat because I made it known, well, we're only here because of Patreon. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get enough Patreon, it's not going to work. Like, it just feels like there's always like an unspoken threat, and it's not that I'm saying that there's a good alternative to that. I'm just saying it's something that makes me uncomfortable, and so it's hard for me to want to be in the position where we're only around because of Patreon. Like, truly, with how much money Google makes as a company, and like, it's astronomical. It's crazy to me that, you know, even channels at our size that, you know, make Google so much money can't do it even part-time. You know what I mean? Like, just off ad revenue, I mean. Like, Really, honestly, I think any channel that's got like 25,000 plus subscribers gets thousands of views per video, has ads running on a bunch of videos, is making Google money. Like they should be making at least a part-time wage, because I'm telling you, the Google's taking a way bigger cut, you know? So like, it just sucks that like you're saying, I think the restaurant analogy is perfect, because it's just like, the restaurant, in this instance Google, should be paying a lot more. They're subsidizing it through everyone else because they don't want to, not because they can't. I want to be clear, because they don't want to pay you more, right? Like that's just what it is, and it sucks.
Yeah, and I want to be clear too. It's not the Patreon money that I have any issue with. It's just specifically the kind of like begging for money, or like the aspect of guilting people. The kind of like, this is on you, or it's your responsibility to keep me going, or anything like that. Like that was never part of the agreement. You can't just start making videos and then assume that there's this unspoken agreement that people will eventually start supporting you financially. And like, we only started a Patreon and all that stuff because people were asking for a long time, like, how can we support you guys? Like, this is when we were making a ton of videos and all this kind of stuff, and we were kind of blowing up in a small scale for the board game space, and relative to where we were at the time. But anyway, I just think as soon as it crosses over into begging and guilting, that's where you've kind of crossed a line. And that's where, even if I like your content, as soon as it gets that, I just feel a bit like it's not right to put the onus on the people watching you to decide. Like, if I want to support you on Patreon, I'll come to that conclusion naturally. I don't need to be convinced to support you on Patreon, is basically what it comes down to. Okay, so what about, I think we're going to skip over, we had a point here about negative reviews and clout. I guess the one thing I just want to say about this briefly, because we'll save this more for the reviews episode, is just to clarify that we don't go out of our way to do negative reviews. We don't seek, if we get offered, if publishers reach out and offer us review copies of a game, if we look into the game and we know we're probably not going to like it, we'll just turn down a copy. We don't go out of our way to play games that we know we're going to like just to publish a negative review to try and get some clout and credibility. I think people who've watched our videos long enough and now listen to the podcast will know we're critical of games. We're fair. Even our favorite games, we criticize. Like, we're always trying to point out things we don't like. We've given tons of negative reviews. You know, our I Want to Play It, Skip It series, lots of games have been skips and that kind of thing. But we don't go out of our way to do negative reviews just for, like, reviewer credibility or whatever you want to call it. Anything you want to add there, Dylan? Okay. So how do you feel about the different ways to run a channel in terms of quantity versus quality, evergreen content? You know, this is something we've also talked about before on the, just on our channel update video. So how do you feel about that? And just like the difference between making a video that is potentially evergreen versus something that is like capitalizing on a time of year, like a season, or capitalizing on the holidays, or, you know.
I honestly don't necessarily feel negative to either one. I think that there's a place and there's a time and there's a reason to make content that takes a lot longer to make and has much higher quality, and isn't capitalizing on necessarily something that just came up. But I think that there also is there clearly is a desire and there clearly is a space to do that more like quantity-based content where you're kind of capitalizing on everything that's happening. But the caveat I would say here is that quantity content, a large part of the time, usually means like much less effort content. And what I mean by that more is that not that there's no effort going into it, that people aren't putting work into it. It's just that sometimes it can feel like the sentiment is, I need to put a video out. What's something I can do? I just need to get a video. I need to do a video. Right. And I've been there. I've had that thought, like, I need to do a video. What am I going to do a video about? And what I've learned over time, and it took me probably longer to get there, is that like, if you're saying that, like, you probably just shouldn't do a video. Like, and that's maybe like, I shouldn't say shouldn't, because like you may have reasons, you might be like, that might be your only income and you do truly need to do a video, but it's not going to be something that's going to it's not going to be the thing that like elevates your channel. It's not going to be the thing that people like clamor for. It ends up feeling like you're just sort of like, it's like you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, and because like that's the content pipeline. And I personally am someone who I'm just like sick of that. Like, I'm sick of like a news item comes out and it's like something that's really worth discussing, really worth like talking about, whatever, in the board game space, in the video game space, in whatever, anywhere, any topic. And rather than it being about like people putting out stuff to discuss it, it's like a 10-minute video of someone summarizing all the things I already know with barely any other insight, and like not really getting into the weeds on anything, kind of just being like, yeah, this is awesome, and just using like buzzwords like that, like I can't, this is, and then you're not really saying much. And like I found that that's like, there was a time when even I, like the content that for those who have been on like following our channel for a while, like the videos that I used to do where it was like the 7 games I'm interested in, or like that caught my attention, or I can't remember what I called them now, but like essentially
I'm
like
excited about, yeah.
Yes, that I'm excited about. Like I found that there was so many times that I just like 3 games in a row that I would talk about. Even though like I am referencing different things, there's different things about the games that I'm excited about, I'm kind of just saying the same thing over and over again, because like I don't have the game in front of me. It's just like there's not, I don't have someone there to discuss it with. Like I'm basically just regurgitating information that people could get anywhere. They could go to this channel together, they could go to that channel together, they could go to Board Game Geek, they could go to Board Game Beat, they could go to wherever. Like it's going to exist in multiple different places, and I'm just a place they might find that content. And I guess like for me, I just found myself less engaged to do that kind of content that like really everyone is doing it, but just with their own rhetoric, if that makes sense. Like they're just putting their own like voice to it, but they're not really saying much different. It's different if we were like doing a discussion on it and really getting into like, here's some things we hope are going to happen, here's some things blah blah blah. But like it's just the quantity content tends to be less engaging. Like it's just there's less of a reason I find to watch it, and the quality content takes longer. And in a space like board games where you could do quality content and get like, 5,000, 6,000 views, and that's like good for the board game space, but that is not good for your wallet, so to speak, if that's your goal. Like I get why people don't do it, but it's just like, it's almost a shame. It's almost like it's disappointing to sometimes look at the space and the creators that are making quality content that takes them longer are much, much smaller than the ones that are saying, here's the every single month, every single 2 weeks, here's the 10 hottest games on Board Game Geek. Right, but I could just go to Board Game Geek and I could just look at them and I could just be like, oh, this number 4 is interesting to me, so I'll click it. Why do I need to hear you every 2 weeks tell me what's hot right now? And X game has been on there 5 weeks in a row. Like, what is that? What is that providing to me, right? Besides something I could watch while I'm like on the toilet. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean like on the bus, on the toilet, walking around my kitchen. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's something to just like have on. It's noise. It's to fall asleep to. It's just something there. And like, that's not the kind of content I want to create. I consume that kind of content, but it just feels like that's not a creative space for me to engage in. That's me just doing something to try to pull some views and money out of everyone's time to be able to function, like make the channel function. And that just became less and less interesting for me and desirable, and it stopped feeling good.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we've gone through a similar, I mean, not identical, but I think we've talked before about like, I've kind of felt more and more over time. I mean, I've done a lot fewer videos than you on the channel, especially many fewer like solo videos, just having like learned how to do this stuff on my own just a couple of years ago and whatnot, and so yeah, over time I think I've gravitated more towards wanting to start making more of those like evergreen videos, ones that are going to last a bit longer, have a bit more of an impact. Like I guess part of it is being able to look back on stuff years from now. Like we talked about this before too, about like looking back on the videos we've made and how many of them do we go back and either rewatch, or how many of them would we say, like if we met someone new or someone who was in our family, you asked like, oh, let's show us your a few of your best videos on your channel, kind of thing. And so like the push that you made with a lot of those videos that you did, I thought were awesome. And I like that we've had more of those on our channel. And I think we both agree that we've wanted to have more of those going forward. But anyway, that's maybe a more of a discussion for another day. The last thing I want to touch on here before we move on to the next section is I just want to clarify that we've never actually paid ourselves yet in the 6.5 years that we've been doing this. We'll probably get there one of these days, but just for the sake of full transparency, all the money that we've made with All You Can Board has gone back into our business account, and we always use it just for getting better equipment, saving up for future opportunities, that kind of thing. And yeah, and that's the thing, like, it would be easy to make videos that we know would make more money that we wouldn't necessarily feel like great about having on our channel if we did want to if the goal was just to make money. But yeah, we really are thinking about this long term, and something that might come back a bit later in the episode is just the aspect of, like, sometimes people will write you off. You know, you start taking your channel in a certain direction, and people will say, like, I used to like so-and-so, but now they do these kind of videos, and so I unsubscribed or whatever. And like, that's like, those always stick with me. When I see people say that about channels, I'm always like taking mental notes of, like, make sure we never do things that will make other people think we've either sold out or are taking an easy route, cutting corners, doing things wrong, whatever. So,
Carlo, I got a bit of a problem. Like, I'm already stuffed. I'm so full, and there's still so much more food in this topic. So I think we're gonna. This is where we're gonna have to probably stop it, and let's just give them a whole other episode to finish off. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think there's too much here to just blow through this too quickly. There's a lot of stuff here that we could go pretty in depth on. So I think we're gonna have to wrap this up. And as future Carlo told you all not too long ago, this will be ending in a second part episode. So keep an eye on our feed over the next couple of days. At some point this weekend, part 2 will show up, and that will complete our discussion. So we won't wrap things up with an official outro here. We'll just say, thanks for listening so far, and stay tuned over the next couple of days for the end of this episode.
See ya.